that's the end of the response by Jesus in Mark. Matthew and Luke continue on. But Matthew has an added verse that comes first, and then they both have the same last verse. So Matthew first, therefore say I to you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. Now Matthew continues, and whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken. Luke, whosoever shall fall upon that stone shall be broken. I'll put and from Matthew because it's connecting the two. Whosoever shall fall on. Whosoever shall fall upon. Both whosoever shall fall. The up part is only Luke. On is both. This stone, Luke, that stone. That stone which the builders rejected and has now become the head of the corner, or since he's talking about himself, this stone. Whosoever shall fall upon this stone shall be broken. Whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken. I want to go with this. I know he just spoke about it earlier, but that's the subject of the conversation, or of his response, so I'm going to stick with this. Stone shall be broken. Yeah, both. But, Matthew, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. Luke, it will grind him to powder. Okay, the same. Matthew continues, and when the chief priests and the Pharisees had heard his parables, they perceived that he spoke of them. Obviously, he said it was about them. The next verse is, but when they sought to lay hands on him, they feared the people. So I'm going to save that, even though that's where Mark continues. And they sought to lay hands on him, but feared the people. The next part of Mark says what happened earlier in Matthew, for they knew that he had spoken the parable against them. So I'll combine the second half of the verse from Mark and Luke. The same thing from Mark. The first half, the chief priests and the scribes, the same hour sought to lay hands on him, and they feared the people. But then the next half is what I'm going to use now. For they perceived that he had spoken this parable against them. But even before that, I have to combine when they heard it, they said, God forbid, which I didn't use earlier. So Matthew, when the chief priests and the Pharisees had heard his parables, I'll use that instead of it, they perceived that he spoke of them. They perceived he had spoken against them from later on in Luke and Mark. They knew that he had spoken the parable against them. And then I'll have from earlier in Luke, they said, God forbid. And then the same hour sought to lay hands on him, but feared the people. So I'll start with Matthew. And when the chief priests, this I'll combine, and when they heard it, it's orange, and when chief priests and the Pharisees priests, the scribes. So where it says they sought to lay hands on him, I'll just use they. They sought to lay hands on him, yeah, from Mark. Okay, so I'll combine chief priests, scribes with here. Chief priests and the scribes. I know scribes and Pharisees come together, so chief priests. I'll add scribes before Pharisees. The chief priests and the scribes and the Pharisees. Pharisees had heard his parables. Heard is from the earlier verse in Luke, so I'll say it's still there. Had heard his parables. They perceived. For they perceived. What does Mark say? For they knew. Did they perceive or did they know? Perceive is Matthew as well. So I'll keep perceive. Actually, I don't think saying they perceived that he spoke against them makes as much sense as saying they knew that he spoke against them. Because again, Jesus clearly told them. They don't have to figure it out. So, I'm going to put knew, and that's Mark only. That he had spoken this parable. That he spoke of them. Should I put had spoken? Had spoken this parable against them? No, I already have. Had heard his parables. That he... I'm not going to put another had. Spoke of them or against them. Actually spoke, and I think instead of them, I'm going to put against them. Against is Luke only, but them is both. They said, God forbid. So I'll put that portion from Luke. It is from the verse earlier, like I said. I'm leaving off it because the it is his parables. I'm leaving off when they because when is used earlier. The they is the chief priests. I use heard. Now I have they said, God forbid. So yeah, as much as I can use is there. Mark, for they knew that he had. They, okay, this they, that he, is all three. Spoke the parable against them. So against is now also Mark. Them is now all three. So then after that, they sought to lay hands on him, but they feared the people. Then I'll have the last portion from the verse, and they left him and went their way. So they wanted to lay holds on him, but they feared the people, so they left. Would that work with Matthew? When they sought to lay hands on him, they feared the people because they took him for a prophet, and they left. From Mark. Luke and the chief priests and scribes. The same hour sought to lay hands on him, and they feared the people. and they left. Yeah, that would work.